Willow Springs, Colorado Territory, 1879. The wind came off the high country with a blacksmith's temper, cutting through my coat and skin, scattering grit that stuck to every breath. It sounded like the world grinding its teeth. Roof shingles rattled loose. A church bell swung without a hand to move it. Even the clouds seemed to lean, like tired beasts trying to rest on the edge of the sky. I was fixing fence behind Morrison's store, hammer in one hand, a pocket of nails in the other. Nothing brave about it, just honest work, keeping rails straight so cattle didn't wander into the alley. Tap, breathe, tap. Work like that keeps your head quiet. Until it doesn't. Then I saw something that didn't belong to the land. At first I thought it was laundry gone wrong, cloth twisting slow in the wind. But the shape was wrong. Too heavy, too still in the wrong ways, too moving in the right one. When the sun slipped from behind a cloud, I saw it clear. A woman hanging upside down from the corral gate at the livery. Her dress flared. Her hair streamed toward the dirt, her wrists tied behind her back. Her ankles were bound so tight the ropes had swallowed their own knots. Blood ran down her forearms, slow and steady, dripping into the dust in a rhythm crueler than a clock. A crowd had gathered, men mostly, the kind who lean on a fence not because they care, but because they like to watch. They looked at her like she was a test, not a person. Sheriff Malcolm Dwyer stood front and center, his badge flashing dull in the gray light. "She'll talk when God turns her right side up," he said, voice calm as bookkeeping. The laughter that followed didn't belong in daylight. I took a step forward, then another. The way you move toward a rattlesnake, not from courage, but to understand the danger you're already in. The wind eased for one heartbeat. In that stillness, I heard her voice. Please. It wasn't begging. It was breath trying to stay in the world. The word carried an accent northern, the kind carried by immigrants who learned English one kindness at a time. A man in a tan duster yelled, "Tell us where you hid the half-breed brat, you witch. Tell us why Greasy Pete's bleeding in the street." Oh, I'd known Pete, the kind of man who could make enemies out of saints. He'd die angry no matter who pulled the trigger. The woman hanging there didn't look like she'd shot anyone. She looked like someone who'd survived too much to waste time on killing. I stepped into the street. Planks creaked under my boots. Dust rose. The men turned, faces closing like shutters. The woman's eyes found mine through the blur gray-green, like water under ice. She didn't plead. She didn't look away. She just saw me, and something inside me stopped. My grandmother used to say that when the world goes silent, it's because a decision has stepped into the room. The wind went thin. The crowd's jeers stretched and frayed. I could smell blood, iron, horse sweat, and beneath it all, the cold breath of Ash Creek rolling through the cottonwoods. "Look at her, not through her," my grandmother's voice whispered. "That's where everything begins." And the weight of her old compass in my pocket felt like an answer waiting its turn. "Turn her down," I said. Dwyer's mouth crooked. "This town ain't your agency, Wakiza. You want mercy. Right to Washington." "I want air to be air," I said, "and law to be law." He grinned, teeth yellow as bone. "Law's what the man with the badge says it is. Paper burns," I told him. "Breath doesn't." He touched his gun, as casual as prayer. "Careful, red man. You ain't got but one life to spend." "No." "Then I'll spend it where it buys something worth keeping." The woman's body jerked weakly, trying to bend enough to ease the rope biting into her spine. The sound she made wasn't human or animal, it was both. A child laughed, the kind of laugh that grows out of fear. "Count of 3, I told Dwyer. "She comes down." He smirked. "Count all you like." 1. I moved on. 1. My knife left my sleeve like light. The blade caught the sun once before it bit through the hemp. The rope split. She fell. I was already running. I caught her by the waist and neck, twisting to take the weight on my shoulder. The ground hit hard. My knee hit harder. The breath whooshed from her chest, then back in with a sound like drowning in air. "Shoot him," someone screamed. Dwyer drew. I fired first not at him, but at the iron hasp on the gate. The bullet sparked, screamed, and the gate crashed open. Horses spooked. iron shoes clattering, harness bells shrieking like angry ghosts. I used the chaos to disappear, lifting her again and running for the alley. The air there smelled of sweat and soap and hair tonic gone sour. Bullets smacked into wood behind us, splinters flying like angry insects. "Stop!" Dwyer's voice cracked across the wind. I didn't. I've spent most of my life not stopping when men like him told me to. She tried to stand on her own, but her legs folded like grass after fire. I grabbed her under the arms, half dragged, half carried until we reached the back fence I'd been fixing. The loose rail hung by one stubborn nail. I kicked it down, shoved her through, followed after, skin scraping on wood. Beyond the fence, the land sloped toward Ash Creek. Cottonwoods bent low, catching light that felt almost gentle. Gunfire cracked behind us, bullets whining through leaves, but sound dies easy in water. I slid down the bank, pulling her with me until we hit sand and cold. "Stay," I said, crouching low, listening. The creek spoke the way it always does. Move, but move fair. She made a noise, half cough, half gasp. Her lips worked. Air. I scooped a handful of water, held it to her mouth. She drank like a creature returned from death, slow, trembling, unwilling to believe it was real. Color crept back into her face, first at the temples, then across her mouth. "Name?" I asked. "Elise," she whispered. "Elise Brennan." Lay. Her voice carried the memory of faraway rain. "Wakiza," I said. "We need to move." She nodded, tried to stand, failed. Her ankles were torn, skin purple and raw where the ropes had eaten through. I cut the last of the bindings and pressed the flat of my blade cool metal against the bruises. She flinched, but kept her eyes on mine, steady, alive. "Can you walk if I carry most of you?" "Try me." Bravery's a strange thing. It sounds like pride until it sounds like prayer. We moved through the creek, feet sinking into mud, water biting like needles. The current covered our tracks. Behind us, dogs barked, but the sound faded when the river curved east. By the time we reached the fallen cottonwood, she was shaking so hard her teeth clicked. I dragged her under the trunk, both of us crawling through cold and dark until light returned on the other side. The ground rose into scrub and shale. There, tucked behind a stand of sage, waited a line shack half forgotten, like most good refuges are. I knocked twice. Silence. Then a scrape of chair legs and a voice through the door. "Hell, Wakiza, you collecting strays?" "Just giving air back where it was stolen." Adam Fitch opened up, shotgun in hand, gray around the eyes from too many bad nights. He saw Elise, her torn dress, the rope burns, the dirt, and didn't waste a question. He stepped aside. "Bring her in." "You?" The cabin smelled of damp wool and coffee left too long on the fire. I laid her on the narrow bed. The blanket was thick black with red diamonds, the kind traded long before the railroad came. I covered her without touching skin. She exhaled once, long and low. I poured whiskey over a rag and cleaned her wounds. She bit down on the blanket to keep from crying out. The sound she made when I hit the worst of it wasn't apology, it was endurance. "Brimstone canvas?" Adam asked quietly. "No," I said. "They tied her by the ankles. Sheriff's idea of justice." Adam's jaw clenched. "Pike's poison, same as always." "She hit a child," I said. "I didn't add my sister's boy. The air didn't need more weight." Adam brewed coffee strong enough to stand upright. I held a cup to her lips. Steam fogged her breath. She drank, flinched, then drank again. The color came back slow but steady. "Why?" Adam asked her. "Why risk your life for a boy this town already condemned?" She looked into the fire, voice shaking only at the edges. "Because a child is a child, because water is water, because my father taught me that a map should lead to fairness, not fences." We let the words settle. Truth doesn't always need company right away. Outside, the wind changed direction, carrying the smell of town horseshoes, cheap soap, beer, and fear. "They'll come," Adam said. "I know," I answered. Elise met my eyes over the rim of the blanket. In them lived pain, yes, but also defiance. Shame had made her a symbol. Recognition made her human again. The fire steadied. I cleaned a cut on her temple. Careful, almost reverent. She flinched, then went still. Trust and pain. side by side. "Wakiza," she said softly. "Why did you come?" "Because you were upside down," I told her. "And the world shouldn't be." She tried to smile. It came crooked, brave, beautiful. The wind nudged the door but didn't enter. The creek kept whispering outside, telling its long, cold truth. "Rest," I said. "When the light tilts, we move." She nodded, eyes closing. The blanket slipped higher over her shoulders. I watched her sleep, the kind of sleep that follows humiliation, not peace. Adam poured himself another coffee. We talked a little, mostly to remind the silence it wasn't in charge. When she woke, the light had turned honey gold. Her breathing was steady. She tried to sit up, and I helped, not as a rescuer but as a man who understands weight. "I thought I died," she said. "You didn't. Is that good?" "It will be." She looked toward the door, where daylight waited like a question. "Then teach me how to walk again." So I did. Not with steps, with rules. Keep the blanket between you and the cold. Keep the fire small. Keep the wind in your ear so you hear what it means before it speaks. Keep water near when truth runs dry. And most of all, keep your eyes on the person, not the story they're trapped in. We stood, the day waiting for us, thin as a wire, ready to sing. If you enjoy the story, hit that subscribe button right away. And if you don't, then just hit the like button anyway to keep more Wild West love stories coming. The sun dropped behind the cottonwoods, leaking light like a slow bleed through torn clouds. Evening came down the mountains in long gray folds, and with it, the chill that makes a man grateful for fire and company, even if both come wrapped in danger. Inside Adam Fitch's shack, the last of the coffee simmered to tar. Elise sat near the hearth, hands extended toward the flames. Her wrists were wrapped in clean linen now, her ankles salved with bear grease. Her hair had dried in unruly waves, half hiding the bruise across her temple. I watched her without letting the watching show. I've seen people after battles, men who walked out of smoke when their comrades didn't, children who survived massacres with eyes too old for their faces, but I'd never seen anyone hold herself the way this woman did. Broken things usually hide. Elise Brennan sat upright, jaw firm, spine like a steel fence post in a hurricane. She'd learned how to build walls the same way I had because she'd needed them to stay human. "You should lie down," Adam said, clearing tin cups from the table. "I've done enough lying down for one lifetime," she answered, voice hoarse but steady. Adam shook his head. "Suit yourself, ma'am. But if Dwyer's hunting, you'll need strength to run." "I won't run again." That pulled my eyes to hers. "You mean to stand and fight?" Her gaze lifted to mine, gray meeting dark umber. "I mean to find out why they wanted me dead." Silence followed, broken only by the hiss of pitch pine catching a new breath. The sound had the rhythm of thought, slow, deliberate, inevitable. "You said something back there," she continued. "When you cut me down, you said air should be air and law should be law." I shrugged a little. "Every man is owed his breath, even in a land that sells it by the acre." "Vo, then you believe in fairness." I looked toward the window, where wind pressed oil paper into a trembling square of light. "I believe in balance. Fairness is what people promise each other before they start counting bullets." She almost smiled. "You sound like my father." "Where is he now?" "Buried in Eagle Rock Canyon." They said his horse stumbled. I studied her face, the way her voice caught on, they said. "And you don't believe that?" "My father didn't fall from horses. He measured land for a living. He read the ground like scripture." She hesitated, then added softly, "He was working for the county survey office when he died. The day before, he told me he'd found something big. Something about water." "Water," I repeated, tasting the word. "That's the heart of it all. Do you know Lucian Pike?" I nodded once, sharp as a blade stroke. "The cattle king who thinks rivers wear his brand. Then you know the kind of man who profits when other people die." "Oh?" The air in the room seemed to grow thinner, pressed by truths too large for its walls. I poured more coffee, though it had gone cold. "Tell me about the boy you hid." Her hands stilled on the mug. "His name was Nidus. About 10. He'd come to town selling game birds. The men at the saloon cornered him, calling him thief. I took him in before they could drag him to the jail. And when they came looking, I told them he was gone. I thought I'd hidden him well enough, in the root cellar beneath my boarding house." Her throat tightened. The night after they left, he disappeared. I thought he'd found his way home. My jaw worked slowly. He's my sister's son. She looked up, startled. Then you? I came searching for him, followed his tracks until the dust swallowed them. Found instead a woman hanging upside down for mercy. No. Our eyes locked, and the rest of the world receded. The crackling fire, Adam's soft movements, the howl of a distant coyote. He told me about you, she said. Said his uncle could ride the wind and never leave a trace. I kept my face still, but something eased around my mouth. He likes stories. They kept him alive while he was feverish. I nodded slowly. Then maybe they kept us both alive. Adam came back from the door, shotgun in hand. There's smoke down the valley, 4, maybe 5 riders. Dwyer's men. They're sweeping the creek. Elise started to rise, but I set a hand on her shoulder. You're in no shape to move yet. Neither are you if they find us here. Adam shoved shells into the gun's breech. They won't. I'll tell them I've been here alone since noon. You two take the back path to the old mine cabin. There's a spring and enough walls to keep wind off your backs. I met his eyes. You'd risk that? He gave a humorless smile. Pike's been trying to buy my land for a year. I've got nothing left he can take that I'm not ready to lose. That's the kind of courage I respect. Quiet, unsung, made of years, not speeches. I helped Elise stand, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. We leave now. We slipped out the rear door into gathering dusk. The air smelled of snow, though the ground was still dry. Somewhere behind us, dogs barked. I led up a narrow deer trail, moving like a shadow stitched from muscle and memory. Elise followed close, her breath coming in short, controlled bursts. The first mile was cruel. Her legs ached from the rope burns, her vision swam, but pride held her upright. At a small clearing, I raised a hand. Rest. I can't, she whispered. They'll catch us. They'll catch Smoke before they catch me, I said quietly. And you need both lungs to fight when we reach the top. Oh. I broke open my canteen and offered it. She drank, grimacing at the taste of metal and leather. You talk like a man used to running, she said. I talk like someone who's learned the land is both map and judge. You respect it, it hides you. You misuse it, it buries you. She watched as I scanned the ridge, every movement economical. The silence between words heavy with meaning. In the dying light, the scars on my hands caught the fire from the horizon, pale threads, reminders of chains once worn and cast off. What do you see out there? She asked. Everything that's wrong, and everything that can still be right. Her throat tightened again, not with fear this time, but with recognition of strength that didn't boast, of gentleness that didn't apologize. Why help me, Wakiza? I kept my eyes on the slope, because when they tied you like that, they tied every woman my people ever lost, and because no one deserves to die upside down. She swallowed hard, not trusting her voice. We moved again, climbing until the town below shrank to a scatter of lamps trembling in the dark. The mine shack showed itself as a silhouette against the rising moon, a broken box on the edge of nowhere. Inside, the air smelled of rust, cold ash, and time. I found an old tin lantern, coaxed life into it with a bit of lard and wick. Yellow light filled the corners, revealing shelves lined with forgotten tools. Elise sagged onto a cot, exhaustion pulling her downward like gravity reclaiming debt. I checked the window slit. They'll search the valley by morning. We'll need to move again before dawn. She nodded, already half asleep. I crouched by the fire pit, striking sparks into a wad of dried moss. When the flame took, I built it small enough for warmth but not light to give us away. As heat reached her, Elise stirred and whispered, "My father said water always finds the fairest path down a mountain. He said whoever controls the water controls the future." I looked up, the flicker catching in my eyes. "Then maybe your father still has something to teach us." She smiled faintly. "If we live long enough to learn it, you will." "You sound sure. I've seen worse odds survive." "Oh." I leaned back against the wall and listened to her breathing settle into something like peace. The lantern light softened her features, stealing years and pain from her face. She looked like the kind of woman who could survive anything but kindness. I took out a small leather pouch from around my neck, a medicine bag my grandmother made before the army camps. From it, I drew a folded piece of buckskin etched with faint charcoal lines. A map, rivers, ridges, a circle marking a spring in the high country. Elise stirred. "What's that?" "Proof that what your father found was real." Her eyes widened. "You've seen it?" I nodded. "Years ago. A spring in the high meadow that feeds Ash Creek. The water rises from federal land, unclaimed. Pike's men built false ditches to make it seem part of his range. Your father must have discovered the truth." She sat up fully now, fatigue replaced by purpose. "If we can prove that, then Pike loses everything built on theft. And my father's death won't be just another accident." I folded the buckskin and slid it back into my pouch. "But proof means nothing without witnesses. We'll need someone who can make the territory listen." "There's a doctor," she said quickly. "Walter Green. My father's friend. He handles Pike's payroll medicine runs, but he's an honest man. If anyone knows what father was working on before he died, it's him." "Oh. Where is he?" "Out near Timberline Mine. Rides his wagon along the North Road every Wednesday." I looked toward the window, calculating. "That's tomorrow. Then we intercept him before Pike's men do." The wind outside shifted, carrying the sound of coyotes farther east. She shivered. "You should sleep," I said. She nodded, lying back, but her eyes stayed open. "When I was hanging there, I thought I saw someone. A boy, standing by the well, watching." I turned sharply. "What boy?" He looked like Nidus. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The fire crackled softly, the sound of burning pine sap like whispered confessions. "If he's alive," I said at last, "we'll find him." "You really believe that?" "I believe the land doesn't forget its children. It just hides them until it's safe." Her breathing slowed, finally giving in to sleep. When the fire sank low, I scratched 3 charcoal marks on the rock, a signal for Adam. I pressed a note sealed with the compass rose into the old man's hand. "Carry this copy to the U.S. Marshal's office at Fort Garland." Adam nodded once and led his horse into the snowfall without a word. I stayed awake long after, feeding the fire in careful intervals, eyes on the dark gap under the door, where wind crept like a cautious thief. My thoughts drifted to my sister Wee Wee singing lullabies to a child who might be wandering now between 2 worlds. I wondered what she'd think of this pale woman sleeping under my protection, this stranger whose courage burned brighter than her fear. Outside, the first snow began to fall, covering the ground in silence, thick enough to muffle gunfire or guilt. And in that silence, something shifted between us. Not love yet, not trust, but the beginning of both, a thread drawn taut between 2 lives that had no reason to cross except that the world, in its broken wisdom, demanded they do. If you like Wild West love stories or Wild West stories, drop a bunch of 1 second and your place in the comments for the Wild West Love channel. Tell me where you're listening from so I don't feel so alone out here. Dawn came reluctant, spilling through the cracks of the shack like a secret unsure of its welcome. The fire had died to red ghosts, the kind that breathe slow in their own ashes. Outside, snow powdered the sage and glinted on the low branches. The air smelled clean again, too clean, as if mercy could be measured in frost. Elise woke with a start, eyes wide, throat raw. For a heartbeat she was hanging again, blood roaring, whirled upside down until the room steadied, and she saw me near the door, tightening the strap of my rifle sling. I moved with the quiet purpose of someone who had already made peace with danger. "We move now," I said. Her voice came rough. "Where?" "To the Timberline Road. We find your doctor before Pike's men do." She pushed herself upright, biting down a groan. Her wrists pulsed with deep bruises, her ankles burned under the bandages. "I can walk." I studied her face, the grit in it more than the strength, and nodded. "Then follow my tracks. Step where I step. Snow hides many sins, but not stupidity." She managed a faint smile. "I'll try not to leave any behind." We left before the light had fully learned its shape. The valley below still slept under mist, Willow Springs a smudge of smoke and memory. She tried not to look back, but memory insists. Somewhere down there was the beam she'd hung from, the laughter that followed her breath. The body remembers what the heart refuses. I led north through thinning pines. My steps were soundless, deliberate. I didn't just move through the land, I moved with it. The trees seemed to bend to me. The snow softened under my weight as if reluctant to tell on me. You learned that in war, she asked. I didn't glance back. No, I learned it trying to survive peace. She thought about that, and about how some men wear silence like armor. How did you find me yesterday? There were a dozen ways into town. Smoke, I said simply. And rumor travels faster than justice. Someone said the sheriff had caught a witch. And you came to watch? I turned my head slightly, eyes sharp but not unkind. I came to see which side the fire was on. We walked until the path widened into a frozen wagon trail. Old ruts held snow in their bellies like open wounds. I knelt, brushed aside the frost, pressed my palm to the track. 2 days, I murmured. 1 wagon, heavy load. Could it be Dr. Green? She asked. Could be. Or men who don't want him talking. I stood and scanned the ridge habit more than fear. Either way, we'll find out. By noon, the sky had cleared to a brutal blue. The snow dazzled until the land itself seemed to cut the eyes. I stopped, lifted my hand. Something caught the sun ahead, a gleam where no river ran. The wagon lay overturned in a shallow ravine. 1 wheel cracked, the tongue splintered. Harness leather lay scattered like dead snakes. Her breath fogged the air. Blood, I said quietly, crouching. I brushed a dark patch frozen into the ground. 2 sets of prints. 1 man walked, 1 was dragged. Her throat tightened. Could it be him? I didn't answer, only moved toward the creek bed. She followed, snow crunching under her boots. The air felt too still, like the world was waiting to see what came next. Among a clutch of granite boulders, we found a shape under a frost-crusted blanket. She dropped to her knees. Walter! The man beneath stirred, breath shallow but there, his eyes cracked open, unfocused. Elise, child. She caught his hand. It's me. I checked the wound, a deep crease through the shoulder. Bullet, I said. Didn't take bone. Elise tore strips from her underskirt to help me bind it. The blood had clotted dark. Who did this? Dwyer's men, Dr. Green gasped. They wanted the papers, your father's maps. I hid them before they caught me. Where? I asked. In the wagon seat, he whispered. False panel. Then his eyes rolled back, and he slumped into sleep. I jogged to the wreck, pried open the cracked seat with my knife, and drew out a leather portfolio bound with cord and sealed with wax. The compass rose stamped on the seal gleamed dully in the cold light. Elise's breath caught. My father's mark. Her hands trembled as she untied the cord. Inside were maps, inked lines, elevations, measurements, and his careful German script. He found it, she whispered. The true source of Ash Creek. I studied the drawings, tracing the blue veins of water, and proof Pike stole half of it, enough to hang him, if the law's still honest. If, she said bitterly. I folded the map and tucked it inside my coat. Then we make it honest. We built a stretcher from broken wagon boards and hauled Dr. Green back to the road. The snow thickened, falling with patient purpose. By dusk we reached the ruins of an old stage stop, a single wall still upright like a sentinel among its own bone. We made camp behind it, fire crackling low. Elise cleaned the wound again, her fingers stiff from cold and exhaustion. He'll live, she said. If we move fast, I replied, eyes never leaving the dark line of trees. What drives you? She asked. Revenge? I shook my head. Balance. My grandmother used to say, when a life is taken, the web sags until something is given back. Your father's death. My sister's boy. Same rope. She watched the fire eat the small sticks we fed it. When they tied me up, I thought of him, my father. I could hear his voice. Measure everything, even fear, he'd say. Look for level ground. I smiled faintly. A man who spoke river language. He would have liked you. I did it. Why? Because he'd know what I am. A man who's seen too much to believe in saints. Then maybe he'd believe in survivors instead. I laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that feels like shaking rust from old hinges. Dr. Green stirred then, voice thin as smoke. Elise, the rest, hidden, high meadow, where your father taught you the stars. Her eyes widened. He left more? He nodded weakly. Letters, names, proof Pike can't bury. Then sleep took him again. I doused the fire with snow. We leave at first light. 2 days climb, bad terrain. Pike's men will chase. She looked at the leather folder in her lap, fingers pressing the compass mark. Then we climb faster. The wind shifted north, sharp as a blade. Later, when the fire had sunk to a quiet glow, she sat awake, listening to the doctor's breathing. I settled against the wall, rifle across my knees, eyes half closed but never sleeping. She studied my face in the flicker, the strong planes, the scars, the calm of someone who had looked too long at cruelty and decided not to mirror it. "You trust me?" she asked softly. I didn't open my eyes. "Not yet, but I trust what you did." "And what's that?" "You stopped running when they came for you. That counts." She thought about that, how standing still can be braver than fighting. The night deepened. Snow drifted against the stone wall. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a wolf called once, its cry both lonely and free. She pulled the blanket tighter and whispered, "He used to tell me the stars never lie." I finally looked up. They don't. But men do, and they name things after themselves to forget it. Silence followed, soft and full. In the faint light before dawn, I stood and brushed the snow from my shoulders. "Time," I said. Elise rose, weary but alive. She tucked her father's map beneath her coat. The doctor slept, breathing shallow but steady. She looked once at the horizon, pale gold over the peaks, and then at me. "What happens when we find the high meadow?" I met her gaze. "Then the land decides what to remember." We started north again, snow whispering underfoot. Behind us, the ruins of the stage stop stood alone, the last smoke of our fire curling toward a sky that was already forgetting yesterday. And somewhere in Willow Springs, Sheriff Dwyer was polishing his badge, not knowing that the woman he'd left for dead was walking the road that would end his empire. The wind carried the sound of hooves from far below, faint, relentless, like history catching up. Elise adjusted the strap of her satchel, eyes fixed on the ridge. "Let them chase," she said. "They'll only find their own ghosts." I smiled, just once. "Good." We moved higher, into the white silence, where the air grew thin and the heart had to beat twice to be heard. We started before dawn, when the stars still trembled above the peaks like cold candles. The snow had deepened overnight, softening every sound into whispers. I led the way, carving a narrow trail through drifts that swallowed my boots. Elise followed close behind, pulling the small sled that carried Dr. Green and the leather portfolio, her father's last voice bound in cord and wax. The climb was brutal. Pines thinned into skeletal aspens, their white trunks like ghosts guarding the slope. The air bit deep, but the pain felt pure, an ache that promised redemption. Each step became a prayer her father might have heard, somewhere beyond the ridge where rivers begin. Around noon, I raised a hand. "Riders," I murmured. We dropped behind a boulder. Far below, 3 dark figures crossed the frozen creek, their horses' breath pluming in rhythm. "Dwyer's scouts," I said. "They're sweeping wide." Elise's fingers tightened around the rifle. "We can't lead them to the evidence." We won't." I glanced toward the cliffs above. "We go high." The ascent turned cruel. Snow reached our knees, and wind carved through our coats like knives. Elise stumbled, fell, rose again. Each time, my hand found her steady, wordless, sure. "You keep saving me," she said through chattering teeth. I smiled without looking back. "You keep needing it." By dusk, we reached a ledge overlooking the valley. The world stretched endless ribbons of frozen creek, the dark line of Willow Springs far below, and beyond that, Pike's Ranch burning faint gold in the distance. We made camp under a granite overhang. I coaxed a small fire to life, shielding it with stones. Elise unwrapped the portfolio and spread her father's maps by the flames. The ink shimmered in the heat, alive for the first time in years. "This," she whispered, tracing the lines, "is what he died for." Numbers, elevations, coordinates her father's precision made sacred by loss. At the corner of one page was a new mark, a circle crossed by a diagonal slash. "What's this?" she asked. I studied it. "The high meadow," I said, "the place your doctor spoke of." Elise glanced toward the ridge. "Then we're close." I nodded. "Tomorrow we finish what your father began." The fire sank low. Silence filled the space between us, comfortable, heavy. Finally she asked, "Do you ever think about leaving this land, going somewhere you're not hunted?" "Every winter," I said, "but my people's stories live here. If I left, they'd turn to ghosts without names." "I know that feeling," she murmured. "My father said land remembers kindness as much as cruelty." I looked up from the fire. "Then maybe tonight it remembers both of us." Sleep came in pieces, broken by wind and dreams. I heard her stir beside the fire, soft gasps, then stillness. When she finally slept, I kept watch, eyes tracing the stars that once guided men braver and luckier than me. By mid-morning, we reached the high meadow. The wind had died there, as if the mountains themselves were holding their breath. Frost jeweled every blade of grass, and a thin stream whispered through the snow silver, clear, alive. "This is it," she said, voice trembling, "where Father taught me the constellations." I scanned the ground. "He said he hid more here." "Oh." She knelt beside a boulder, half buried in ice, the same one her father once called their North Star. Beneath its base, the stones looked arranged, too deliberate for chance. She brushed away the snow, pried one loose, and there it was, a metal box, rusted but whole. Her breath caught. "Please," she whispered to no one, "let it be real." The lid creaked open. Inside lay more maps, photographs of diverted canals, and a sheaf of letters stamped with Lucian Pike's signature. Her voice broke. "This is everything, proof of the theft, the murder, all of it." My shoulders eased, but my eyes stayed wary. "Then we've won." "Not yet," said a voice behind us. We turned. Sheriff Dwyer stood at the meadow's edge, revolver drawn, snow clinging to his boots. Behind him, 6 riders fanned into a crescent. At their center sat Lucian Pike, tall in the saddle, his black coat rippling like a banner of rot. "Touching little picnic," Pike said, voice smooth as oil. "But it ends here." "The." Elise rose, clutching the box to her chest. "You killed my father." Pike's grin widened. I corrected his mistake. He thought water belonged to everyone. I know better, it belongs to those strong enough to claim it. I stepped forward, rifle leveled. "And you'll lose it the same way, by the hand of someone who remembers fairness." Dwyer's eyes narrowed. "Drop it, Indian." The world held still. Even the wind seemed to kneel and wait. Then, faint and distant, a shout echoed from below. "Federal marshals, drop your weapons." The riders hesitated. From the ridge beyond, a column of horsemen appeared, badges glinting, rifles raised. Dr. Green rode among them, pale but upright, his shoulder bandaged, his eyes alive with fury. Pike's face froze. "You should have died," he spat. Green's voice carried sharp and clear. "I did, once. You buried the wrong man." Gunfire split the air. I fired twice. 2 men fell before they could reload. Dwyer swung his revolver toward Elise, but a marshal's bullet found him first, spinning him into the snow. Pike wheeled his stallion, spurred for the slope, but the horse lost footing on the ice. Both went down hard, sliding into the very stream he'd stolen. His gun went off once, uselessly, and the current took him coat, greed, and all down the mountain. Silence followed, heavy and immense. Snow drifted again, soft as forgiveness. While the marshals gathered the fallen guns, a small boy eased out from the willow by the stream, gray-green eyes I'd seen before. "Uncle, nidus raspid." I knelt and touched my forehead to his, the way my grandmother welcomed the lost home. Elise stood trembling, the metal box in her arms. "It's over," she whispered. I lowered my rifle. "No, it's beginning." I helped her lift the box to the marshals. "Let them see what truth looks like when it survives winter." Dr. Green nodded weakly. "Your father's name will stand." Down below, the creek ran clear, washing away the blood, the lies, the long years of theft. Elise looked toward the valley. The light hit the snow and turned it gold. For the first time in years, the world didn't look cruel. It just looked honest. She turned to me. "What happens now?" I smiled faintly. "Water finds the fairest path. Maybe we should, too." She slipped the compass from her pocket, the one her father had carried his whole life. The needle pointed north, steady, unwavering, sure. "Then north it is," she said. Together we started down the mountain, leaving behind the ghosts of lawmen and thieves, the echoes of gunfire fading into wind. The land stretched wide before us, empty and open, waiting to be written clean again. And somewhere between the last ridge and the first thaw of spring, the west took one quiet breath and began to heal. 3 weeks later, spring broke across Willow Springs like a long-denied mercy. The snow melted from the ridges, turning creeks into bright ribbons that sang of second chances. The courthouse bell rang once at noon, and with that sound, the last